Okay, so here's another Chroma plugin update for Unreal. I'll just show you how to create a new animation. All right, so let's start with a new animation asset. So I just say add new miscellaneous, and I can pick a 1D or 2D animation. I'll do 2D. Call it new animation. And if I go to edit, here we go. And first thing I want to pick a device. The default's the keyboard, but if I want to do keypad or mouse, I'd pick that here. And say set device. Here, and the grid changes based on the device, but I'll use keyboard. Okay, and then now I can just import a image. So I'll start with a static image. There we go, keyboard image, and there you go. It imports the image. There's a couple different formats, BMP, JPEG, and PNG. Okay, or I can hit cancel. Let's dock this frame, or dock the custom window, and I'll delete this existing frame. I can also import a GIF animation. So here's the keyboard GIF animation. Okay, and if I go to the first frame, okay, so it's a spinning color wheel. Okay, and save the asset. And by default, if I scale the curve here, it's an 8-second animation because the default frame is 1 second. I could change each frame here with the override frame time to be, and this is in seconds, to be 100 milliseconds per frame. And click the override button. And that will scale the 8 frames down to under a second here. So 800 milliseconds, right? Okay, let's save that. And if I go over to the example, if I go over here to the content browser, I can hover the animation asset and hit the play button. And there we go, it plays on my keyboard and cycles once. All right, if I want to see what this animation looks like looping, here, let's start with a new level. Let's do a default level here. All right, and if I go into the blueprints, okay, and remember we called this a new animation. Okay, so here we go. We've got our new level. So the first thing we want to do is load the SDK. So I'll just start with begin and call the ChromaSDK. We can call it init. There we go. Now we're initialized. Next step, we need that animation object. So I could just add a variable. Okay, and I'll set the variable type to ChromaSDK. There's the animation object here. So I want the 2D object. Okay, and now with the variable created, I can do a set or a get, and I'll use a set. Okay, and then this will give me the nice drop down to set it, and we call the animation new animation. So there we go. Now we have a setter. We have access to the animation. Now we can load the animation. So from here we can say load, and that'll create the effect IDs. And then we can play the animation. Okay, and if I compile that, oh, we got to set the target. Okay, so we have the animation object. Let's take that and set the target for the load and the play. Okay, good. Compile that. Everything looks good. Save the scene or the level. Save the level. If I hit play, it plays through the animation once. Okay, but what if you want looping? So instead of calling play, okay, so now if we want a looping animation, once we've loaded it, we can use the play with onComplete. All right, and this has a complete event that we can use to loop it. I'll just move this up a little bit. Need to assign it the animation. All right, and then with the onComplete delegate here, if I do a custom event here, this will be the onComplete So this will be called each time the animation completes, and then it also gets the animation object. And I can link this back to the load, but that starts to get a little bit messy. So in this case, sometimes I'll just create a custom event to keep this cleaner. So if I do a custom event, I'll call this the do play loop. Okay, and let's add some other things in here, like we'll do a check for is loaded. Okay, so when we go to call this custom event, it'll say, hey, is the animation loaded? We'll do a branch. Okay, so here's our loop. Is it loaded? Okay, it would be nice if it had a animation parameter. So let's go to the custom event and add a input. So this will be the animation, and then set the object to the ChromaSDK to the animation object. And we can just connect that here. And this will work for multiple animations at the same time because it's going to be passed as a parameter. All right, so we're going to check if it's loaded. If it's not loaded, then we're just going to call the loaded function. So, or we're going to call the load function. So if you're not loaded, we need to load it. It needs a target. Okay, and then we can do this play with onComplete. Okay, so if it is loaded, we can play the animation. And then once it's loaded, we can also play the animation. We don't need this load over here. So it does the set, and then we can do the do play loop. That'll take the animation object. Okay, and then we can take the target from the function over here. Let's see if I can get this untangled. It would be nice if you could grab the line and then make it go around there, but I guess they're just going to cross. Okay, so here we go. So begin play, started the game, initialize the ChromaSDK, set the animation object, and we have the nice drop down to select the new animation, and then call our do play loop function. Here's the do play loop custom event. It checks if the animation has been loaded. If not, it loads the animation and then plays it. If it's already loaded, it just plays the animation. Then the onComplete event, to loop it, we just need to call the do play loop again and pass that the animation. All right, so compile that, play, and I see my keyboard looping. Shift F1 to get my mouse. Go back to the blueprint. There we go. So we can see we're still in this animation loop. So there's the flow. It's checking, is it loaded? Yes, it's loaded. It plays the animation when it's complete. Fires off the onComplete event. And then that calls the function again. And it plays the animation and loops, and it keeps looping. All right, cool. Well, here you can see that, so we can load a static image. We can load a GIF image, which populates the frames into the animation. And then from the animation asset, you can bring it over to the blueprints, and in your blueprints, you initialize the SDK, use a variable to set the animation object, and then we did a custom function here, custom event, to do the looping. So you can check if an animation is loaded, you can play it, or you can play it with the complete event, and then use your onComplete event to loop the animation. All right, and one last thing. If you wanted to make this work for multiple assets, you can change this to be an array. So if we just make an array, context, make array. Okay, it doesn't know the type yet. You could do a for each. There we go. And then now it kind of knows the type. So it changes to blue. So it knows it's an object. We want to connect this array element to the animation here. Now I can connect the for each loop to an array that I pass in. There we go. And then now it knows the type. So I don't need the set anymore. Make sure we're not playing. Good. Okay, so I'll delete the set. I'll connect the init to the for each loop. And the loop body will start the playing of the animation. And then here, you can use the asset dropdown to select a new animation. And then you can add pins to play more animations at the same time. Like a keypad effect and a mouse effect. All right. Compile that, save it, play. Here we go. And I can see my keypad, my mouse, and my keyboard are all animated. Shift F1 and go over to the blueprint. Okay. And this is all working because the doPlay loop has an animation parameter. And so that's being passed. It gets a little tricky around these onComplete delegates. But since we have a delegate that passes the animation object, we always know what effect that we're linking to. The tricky part is if you didn't have an animation object, and I kind of tried to link the animation to this animation here, the Unreal Blueprint scope gets a little fuzzy about which one that would be, and sometimes you just get animations playing for your last array element, and it's like, what's going on? But that's not a problem because we always pass the animation object and use the animation object from the onComplete event. Okay. Well, again, this is a video about creating an animation from an image file, a GIF animation, and then we can load those in blueprints and play multiple effects at the same time that are also looping. All right. Thanks for watching.